Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss my memories with SEGA. So this one is going to include multiple consoles because I never actually owned a SEGA console myself, not until I was, I was in high school, I'm pretty sure, and my uncle gave me his Dreamcast, which I have a black Dreamcast. Those things are so sick. If you've never seen like the black Dreamcast, I highly recommend looking them up. I think they look great. But I didn't have a Dreamcast growing up, but I did play the Dreamcast a lot. And I played the Genesis a lot. But since I never owned them, and a lot of my memories consist of like, hey, here's just me playing multiplayer, I was like, I guess I'll just do both the consoles together because all I have is the Genesis and then the Dreamcast as far as Sega consoles. But starting with the Genesis, of course, the classic, I went to my aunt's house, my cousin had it, and then I would play on her Genesis all the time. I would go over there, and that's all I did. And that was it. I remember thinking back on those times. It was like, if I was over there, all I had were those games, and that's all I did was play the game, because it was like I was the only kid. I'm an only child, so if there weren't already like my other younger cousins over there, which there weren't, it was always my cousins who were older than me, and video games. It's like, thank goodness for video games, because I would be bored out of my effing mind. And on the days I didn't get to play the game, I was bored out of my effing mind. I can remember that to this day. Like, if I wasn't able to play the game, I was just like, there's nothing to do here. There's nothing for me to do. It was one of those situations where it was like, this is your one respite. If you don't have it, you're effed. But I played the crap out of that Genesis. And of course, I got to play two amazing Genesis classics, which, naturally, Sonic is one of them. So it was Sonic 2, which I loved. And the other, the game based off of my favorite Disney movie, Aladdin. And I love both those games. Aladdin, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, Aladdin is the very first game I ever used cheat codes on, because I found the level skip code for that game because I could never beat it. I think I would get to, maybe the desert level after the volcano stuff happens, and that's about it. I think that was the furthest I could get with the amount of lives I had, because, classic games, it was like, hey, you can continue from this level as long as you have enough lives. And then once you run out of lives, it's like, well, that's it. So I used the level skip code to technically beat the game, and who knows if I can't really recall. I may not have actually even beaten the final level, but I definitely used that cheat code to see the other levels in that game. So that was definitely a unique memory for me to have, where it's like, I'm fairly certain that's the first game I ever used cheat codes on. And I love the Aladdin game, of course, with it being my favorite Disney movie. It's nice that it just has a really good game, and of course, it's one of the classics is like that. And I never played the Lion King game. I didn't even realize that was another one of the popular old Disney games until they actually did that re-release where it's like, hey, you can get Aladdin and Lion King together in a combo. And I was like, oh, I had no idea the Lion King game was popular like that. So I always enjoyed it. It was super fun playing the Aladdin game. Once again, playing Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was always a great time. And that wasn't until, it probably wasn't until way later that I, actually figured out all the stuff about Super Sonic and all that from Sonic Adventure, or not Sonic Adventure 2, but from, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, where it's like, you can unlock this, and this has a cheat menu. I'm pretty sure I didn't figure out the cheat codes for that game until way later when I was with my cousins who did have the Dreamcast, but also that was where kind of the Game Genie era was in existence, and my cousin even had the Sega Game Genie. So we were doing all sorts of wild stuff with the Sonic games. So that was pretty fun. Once again, just silly memories of being like, oh, you can do this, and you can just unlock, unlimited Super Sonic and Infinite and all this. So that was always a really cool experience, and having these weird things happen and going to like the secret menus and stuff. So that was definitely fun back then. But upgrading to the Dreamcast is a very special thing, because I never had it myself. Like I said, it was mostly other family members that had it. Having like that random memory in my head of watching, this is a different set of cousins, but watching an older cousin of mine play Resident Evil Code Veronica, had to get Resident Evil in there, of course, but watching my cousin play Resident Evil Code Veronica, and it was like, man, I can't get this game. That was, it was only on Dreamcast, so I had no experience with Code Veronica until PS2. It was kind of akin to RE4 on GameCube, except I actually got to play that one. So, aside from that, the big experience I have when it comes to Dreamcast, and I'm gonna just say the game, it's Power Stone 2. I've seen lots of things, and I've played other games, of course, on the Dreamcast, but none of that stuff matters. None of that matters to me beyond Power Stone 2. That game was, even though Smash Brothers existed, of course, it was on the N64, and then, honestly, we were playing Power Stone 2 well into, the era of, I mean, heck, I'm pretty sure we were playing Power Stone 2 even when like Brawl came out on the Wii. Like, we would go back to Power Stone 2 all the effing time. Like, it was like, hey, you guys want to play Power Stone? Like, yes, let's play Power Stone 2. So there are chunks and chunks of my life that consist of being up all effing night, and it's just like, I just want to play Power Stone 2. And it's like, of course. And that's all we did. We would just play Power Stone 2, and it's so fun. And it was the game made by Capcom, of course, Resident Evil and everything. But Capcom had that game, and even more than Dino Crisis. I was like, where the F is Power Stone? And I've talked about this before, where I was like, for years, I was like, they could just re-release it. For those of you that don't know, Power Stone had a collection on the PSP. It was called the Power Stone Collection, and it was the first and second game combined. Plus, they added the ability to play as like the main bosses and stuff from the first game. And it was like, oh, that's amazing. But they only had it on PSP. And when they finally did that Capcom Fighting Collection 2, I lost my mind. I was like, oh my God, Power Stone is back. Power Stone is online. And that's all I needed. It didn't need to be remastered. It didn't need to be remade and updated with new graphics. Just re-release it and boom, I'm happy. And I am happy. I'll be happier, of course, when the game actually comes out. I didn't rush to buy the first one when it was like, Marvel vs. Capcom. Even as much as I love MVC2, I wasn't losing my mind over that one nearly as much. I was like, oh, that's really cool, but I'm not as invested in MVC2 as I am in Power Stone. Like, I don't think about Marvel vs. Capcom nearly as much as I think of Power Stone. Plus, I probably played both of those around the same time. Or, well, actually, no, I played Power Stone even later. I had Marvel vs. Capcom when it came out on 360. I was like, I'm definitely buying that. So for me, it wasn't as crazy to be like, oh man, where's Marvel vs. Capcom? I was still like, oh yeah, I played it on 360, and I kind of left it behind. But like I said, me and my cousins played Power Stone up until the Wii was still out. So it was still very, much more recent for me personally, because we would just go back to it, and it was like, when is it coming out? And I'm super happy to have that game back, finally. Power Stone is coming back, so I'm very excited for that. I cannot wait to get that game, and I'm definitely getting it on Steam because free online. But I'm excited. I'm excited for Power Stone, and I loved playing Power Stone back in the day. And we had all the weapons. Like, my cousin made sure we unlocked every single weapon. We were doing all sorts of stuff. They had the effing Guts sword from Berserk is in that game. I don't think it's his technical sword, but it's 100% a reference. If you've never played Power Stone 2, I don't know if the weapon's in the first one, but if you've never played Power Stone 2, I'm telling you, it is Berserk. It is the Berserk sword. It is 100% the Berserk sword. Which leads to another very odd memory that I have, which is playing, for anyone that doesn't even know this, Berserk has a video game on the Dreamcast. It's called Guts' Rage. And I remember playing that when I was young, because my uncle, of course, he had his Dreamcast. And I remember playing that when I was really little. And then eventually when he gave me his Dreamcast, I got Berserk, what else I get? I got Berserk, Dino Crisis, which was great to have back. And I think like an NBA game, which, I don't care about sports. It was those two. And then there's one other thing, and this will be like the last bit of the video, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the Berserk game is really interesting. Also, another one of those old games where it's like, oh, it's like an adventure game, but when you die, you have to go back like really, really effing far. It's very interesting. I think you can only, if I remember right, you can only save per level. So it was like, if you don't beat the level, and I think once again you get like 3 lives per level, if you can't beat the level, you lose. But it was a really interesting game, and I've never read or seen Berserk. It's like in a little weird part. It's after he loses the eye, and he's got Puck, the little fairy dude. And so it's after like it's after that madness. I know, like a very microscopic bit, it's after the madness. So he lost the eye already. It's already gone. And does he have both arms? I think he has both his hands still. I don't remember. Point is, it had some interesting mechanics because, of course, as we all know, Guts walks around with his insane giant, like demon, well, it cuts everything up. Just a cutting blade, a giant blade. In the game, they made the mechanic where you can't, like, cut people if you're in a narrow hallway. So, like, if you try to do a move, it'll hit the wall, and then it's like, oh, I can't use this move. You have to use different weapons. So he can do, I'm pretty sure he has hand-to-hand, and then he also has like a little crossbow on his arm that he can shoot off. And it's an interesting game. It's also challenging because of that, because it's like one specific level where you're like going through the city to try to like reach a castle or whatever to get to like the bad guy of the village. And it's like, it's surprisingly tough in that level because you're not really strong if you're not using the sword to slice people up. And then of course he had, Guts' rage, so he has like a rage mode that you can do where you can, it's like 3 times the damage and all that good stuff. But it's very fascinating. I highly recommend looking into that. It's, once again, it's a Dreamcast anime game, so you just think about that as you will. But that's one of those weird things where it's like, man, anime, just anime being so popular in certain weird ways, where it's like Berserk was so popular even during the era of the Dreamcast that they were like, hey, we can put this in the US. It's one thing for it to be in Japan. Like, there are a buttload of anime games that I wish we got in the States. Like, there's a ton of Naruto games that we never got in the States where I'm like, man, I wish we could have got that. Or if we got them super late, like a lot of the Clash of Ninja games eventually still came out, but they were like all on the Wii at the time, so I never had a Wii. So I missed out on like a giant chunk of, the Naruto Clash of Ninja games. But originally, all those games were on GameCube. They just had to redo them because by the time they came out in the States, we were onto the Wii. So it was like, oh yeah, we'll just move this around. But it's like all those games were made originally for the Wii, or for the GameCube, I mean. So, we missed out on a buttload of stuff. But Berserk got a game on the Dreamcast in the United States of America. And that's crazy to me. But it's a pretty interesting game to play. Now, the other thing that is just, this is probably the best memory and just the weirdest experience that I could ever possibly have with the Dreamcast. So, amongst the games that I got, where I mentioned, it was whatever, NBA 2K1, Berserk, and then Dino Crisis, played a little bit of that, had some fun, bringing back some old memories. The other thing that my uncle gave me was this old, it was the first one I've ever had, only one I've ever had, I believe, and it was a ROM, and it was an NES ROM. And on this NES ROM CD that he gave me was every NES game that was ever made, including Japanese games. Crazy experience. Also a bunch of weird hacks and stuff. I'll never forget showing my friends this when I was in college, and we were playing the game and I set it up, and so it had a bunch of Mario games on it, of course, but then there were some weird hacks, and one of them was Super Dicker Bro. And instead of player 1 and player 2, it was Dicker 1 and Dicker 2, and it was so ridiculous. I'm like, where does this stuff come from? But shout out to Super Dicker Bros, because that was hilarious. And of course the characters were naked. You get the mushroom, they're naked. You see the Super Dicker. Funny times. But in the experience of understanding the world a little bit better, I ended up jumping over to the Japanese side of the games. And I was like, oh, it's just whatever. I'm just picking random things from a giant long list. I don't know what this stuff says. And I ended up hitting one game it was super obvious to tell what it was, and it was Dragon Ball Z. And it wasn't Dragon Ball, it was Dragon Ball Z on the NES. And that was a huge perspective shift for me, understanding that anime is that much older. When we got DBZ in the States, it was super old at that point. Dragon Ball Z has 5 games on the NES alone. Granted, it's exactly like it is today, where it was 5 effing games and all of them stopped at the Cell Saga. Or, I'm sorry, they stopped at the Frieza Saga. It was you end at Frieza. So all the games were like that. So they've never changed. Where it's hey, you want an update, but stop at the same spot? They've been doing that since 1985. It's been happening the entire time. But that was a crazy experience. It's a card game, by the way. So it's a card game where you pick, your different skills and stuff like that. And it's interesting. All the, animations look the same. I played through all the different versions and stuff. I think maybe the first 2 don't go all the way up to the end of the Frieza Saga. Obviously, I did not beat all of these games, but some of them start you a little bit earlier and then others start you a little bit later, and it's oh, okay, that's interesting. So maybe it does go past the Frieza Saga. Now that I thought about that, some of them I could tell started a little bit later, but it was all Frieza. But I was like, holy crap, that was a crazy shift in my perspective of the world. We get stuff super duper late. I mean, honestly, when did that was over a decade later that we ended up getting DBZ and stuff. I don't know the exact year that we got, Dragon Ball Z, but I mean, that's nuts. And it's not like we got Dragon Ball first. We got Dragon Ball Z before we got Dragon Ball in the US. So it's just crazy to think that every time I think of stuff like that, I think about the fact that I still remember being in 2nd grade, and for whatever insane reason, my 2nd grade classroom in our little library, there was a One Piece manga, and I had no idea what that was back then. And I think of that all the time. I saw a One Piece manga in 2nd grade, and that junk would probably be worth some money if I was a little a-hole. I would have stole it. I probably would have destroyed it anyway at this point. But I think of that all the time. Like, I wonder what that would be worth. Like, that's interesting. But yeah, there's like 5 Dragon Ball Z games on the NES, and I learned that because of a weird ROM that my uncle got from somebody somewhere, and it had like every effing NES game that was like ever made. So definitely a fantastic time with that CD and playing tons of crazy stuff. Like there's this one train game. It had a really great intro, and I think I found it on YouTube one time because I just liked the song. But I just always remembered that. I was like, man, this song's really cool. And then I would just go through, play a bunch of random Japanese games, play a bunch of classic stuff. There was all like Pac-Man on there. Obviously, of course, the classic Smash Brothers games. All of that stuff was on there, and it was crazy. And I still have that to this day. I haven't played it in like 100 million years, so maybe one day I'll set up my Dreamcast and I'll do a stream of that and just be like, here's a bunch of old games, Super Dicker Bros. But that was definitely like a crazy experience. It's the first time I ever experienced, like a ROM hack of anything. And it was just like, whoa, I can just play any NES game. This is nuts. That's actually, oh man, here's a crazy one. That is how I first played Excitebike, which is legit. Instantly, I was like, this is my favorite NES game. My favorite NES game is Excitebike on the NES. The fact that you can make your own levels, another insane moment in my life where I was like, they had the tech to make your own levels on an NES cartridge. I did not know that. Of course, we even had the tech to save games, but they only had that for, like Legend of Zelda. But that was nuts. I was like, I didn't know games did that. Like, I thought that was way more modern, but it was like Nintendo was doing some crazy stuff. They were doing everything. Obviously, the Virtual Boy didn't work out too well, but they were doing dance pads. They were doing like mouse controls, and obviously that was also with the Power Glove. I mean, they were doing everything. So it was crazy. I was like, wow, I had no idea. I mean, obviously no one really talks about Excitebike. Excessively underrated. Love that opening theme song as well. I still remember it by heart to this day. But love me some Excitebike. And of course, I found that thanks to that ROM hack, because I never would have known what the, classic Excitebike was. I played Mario, and that was about, I had Mario and Mario 2 and Duck Hunt because I had the combo for NES. That was my limit of NES games back in the day because that was all my aunt had. And then eventually when I got her Nintendo, those are the only games I ever had. And now I have way more because, once again, shout out to my uncle. When he gave me his games, he gave me like his Dreamcast, and then I think it was even later, I ended up getting like all his NES games. He had like an actual like Nintendo branded, it's not, I guess it would be pleather, but it's like a pleather case that's all black, and it just has Nintendo in gold on like the bottom right corner. If you look it up, you can, I'm sure you'll easily be able to find it. But it holds like 20 games or something crazy like that. I'm like, this is a super cool thing. Like, he had the whole case and everything. So I got a bunch of just wild stuff. But Nintendo, NES connection. But it's thanks to the Dreamcast that I have that connection. So shout out to the Dreamcast and allowing me to have that very random connection, more so to NES, but also Power Stone 2. It's one of the best. I think it's, honestly, I've always felt Power Stone was a bit underrated because it kind of lived and died on the Dreamcast, as most things did. Like, once it was the Dreamcast, if it didn't get remade, that was pretty much where it was. It was like, it's, that's kind of the home of games that, either they got remade and they got to live on, like, the Sonic Adventure games, Code Veronica got Code Veronica X. If it didn't get that, it was just like lost to time. It was just like, hey, we love this. Can we have this again? And sometimes you're lucky. It takes 100 million years, but sometimes you're lucky. And, well, for the Shenmue people, I'm sorry, you weren't as lucky. But Power Stone's coming back, and that's super easy for me. So I'm gonna end this one here. Sorry to end that, for the Shenmue people out there. I do apologize. He shouldn't have done that to you. That was effed up. They shouldn't have done that. But Power Stone's coming back. I'm super happy for that. I would love to know, for those of you out there that experienced the Dreamcast in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, literally most of my memories don't come from when I owned the Dreamcast. But I would love to know your memories with the Dreamcast, the console, the final piece of that Sega console life. And it was a great console, being online. I kind of mentioned this back in the GameCube video. My cousin playing Phantasy Star. He continued that in the GameCube, but that started on Dreamcast. So once again, shout out to Phantasy Star Online, because just watching my cousin play that, I was like, huh, that's interesting. Online, all these people, that's crazy. So shout out to Phantasy Star. But like I said, want to know your memories with the Dreamcast or Sega in general. Let's go Sega because for me it really was just being like, hey, here's everything, and you know, like the last chunk of this was really a connection to the NES more than it was Sega. You know, even the Dreamcast that I played it on, it was just because of the Dreamcast and Sega as a whole. So in general, I would love to know your memories and love of the Sega consoles and, you know, the company as a whole, where we are. You know, we still got Sonic for, you know, dude, it's got its highs and lows, but those movies, top tier. I love all those movies. Still haven't seen Knuckles. I'll check it out eventually, but still love me some Sega. Appreciate everything that we got from them. You know, obviously, I'm sure Capcom would have ended up making Power Stone on something else because it was Capcom more than it was, you know, Sega. But for whatever reason, it took them 100 million years to finally bring that bad boy back. So thank you, Sega, for even making it possible, I guess, because clearly Capcom didn't care that much about the franchise. They made 2 of them, and then they were just like, we'll just leave it. Also, obviously, Crazy Taxi. I can't believe I almost didn't mention Crazy Taxi. And I played a little bit of Jet Set Radio, which in the States it was Jet Grind Radio. I don't remember why they had to change it, but weird legal stuff. It was Jet Grind Radio in the States. I played a little bit of that. I remember having a memory of that, like just like a tiny bit. I played that a couple of times, but obviously Jet Set Radio Future when it came out on Xbox was like, oh, I get it now. But shout out to those as well. But we'd love to know all your memories, you know, your hopes and dreams of whatever Sega does in the future. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.